Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending from wherever you're joining us this beautiful day. My name is Moses Joshua. I am the meetup organizer for Hack the Box Nigeria, and it's a privilege to have you join us this beautiful day. Today we'll be discussing on the recent buzz around the ChatGPT, especially in the world of cybersecurity. And we have an amazing guest this evening who will delve into how advanced language models like ChatGPT can be used to enhance, the capability of cybersecurity professionals, especially when it comes to ethical hacking. And then we have some use case on ChatGPT in ethical hacking and cybersecurity operations. And just like we all know, of course, cybersecurity have a very broad, it's broad, talking about ethical hacking, threat hunting, incident response, penetration testing, and the likes. And so, well, this application or this platform or this language model actually have a lot of things that we need to put into consideration. And of course, many of us have the fundamental knowledge of what exactly it is. Many of us have used the platform to do one or two things. I specifically have done a lot of things with ChatGPT, but not really related to cybersecurity. But trust me, there's a lot more to know in using ChatGPT. So, and today our special guests will dwell on some of the most important things you need to know: the ethical consideration, the importance, the limitations, and a lot of things when using even not just ChatGPT, but other AI-based tools as it relates to cyber security. Now, the thing is, this is a meetup by Hack the Box Nigeria, which is actually a meetup group for those that are interested in ethical hacking or that have one or two things to do with cybersecurity. But this is the Nigerian group. We have several other countries that have their own group and have their own meetup, but this is for us. And of course, you can invite as many people as possible in and outside Nigeria, so we can learn and add to our body of knowledge. So this evening we have a very special guest. He is an ethical hacker, and as well as he's actually a cybersecurity researcher. And I think he'll do justice to introduce himself more in person of Shylock. I don't know. Hi, Shylock. Good day. Okay.
Hello. It's afternoon here, so good
Oh,
afternoon.
good afternoon. Thanks for honoring our invitation today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so can you just please introduce yourself, like before we get started?
Okay. My name is Emmanuel in real life, but online I'm Shylock. I like to hack stuff, mostly web applications, and by trade I'm a security researcher from application security. I work for a security compass, and yeah, what else? I'm interested in bug bounties. I'm part of Max Headroom CTF. Um, that's pretty much it for me. So
All
yeah.
right. Thank you so much for joining us again. Trust me, he has a lot of experience when it comes to cybersecurity research, and is a part of a CTF, which is of course very popular in Nigeria. And so privileged to have you today. So just before we waste much for our time, I don't know if you can if you're able to share your screen so we can begin the session.
Okay. So it says here that the host has disabled screen sharing. Okay, I think you just enabled it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll share my screen now.
All right. So while you do that, I just wanted to tell us that at the end of this session, we'll be having one or two questions, and there'll be hack the box vouchers for training and also gift cards for swag card. I mean, yeah, so I mean, just please, I'm very sure this will be a very interesting session. I will advise you get your notes, you get your paper, whatever you use to take notes, and just enjoy the ride. It's gonna be an amazing session, and yeah, just enjoy. I mean, the slide will be shared after the session. Just enjoy the presentation first. Thank you very much. You can proceed, Mr. Emmanuel.
Okay. So as has been established already, the topic for today is the usage of ChatGPT in ethical hacking and cybersecurity operations. So, well, it's like the actual content of the presentation is, I would guess it's not as accurate to the description. I focused mainly on ethical hacking and specifically web application hacking because that's like my area of expertise. So I didn't really feel comfortable like talking about like any other field. So yeah, by me and ChatGPT, I used ChatGPT a lot, and as I will like soon describe, it's present here because of one of like the ethical considerations of like whether or not we want to use ChatGPT or like when we use ChatGPT, how we present that to the world.
Sorry,
Okay.
Emmanuel. I'm sorry. Can you please reshare your slide again? I think we
Oh, you can't see my screen?
yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened, but yeah, it's back. So can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. So first slide, who am I? I already covered this, but I guess I'll do it again because it's part of the slides. Emmanuel, security researcher. I'm a fourth year IT student at York University, and may or may not be, but because like this whole presentation was supposed to highlight just how useful and how human-like ChatGPT is. Like most of the slides in this presentation were generated from ChatGPT or ideas sourced from ChatGPT and then validated on the internet. So moving on. So what are large language models? ChatGPT is an interface to a large language model. I feel it's important to first cover like what those are, like what they do and like how they operate so that we can get a better understanding of like how ChatGPT works. So like LLMs, they stand for large language models, and they are AI technology trained on like massive amounts of text data. So they improve natural language processing for a wide range of tasks. And like the core idea behind these is that like they are like based on deep learning models, and they can basically understand and generate like human text basically, so human language. And language can be anything, any kind of language, as long as like the model is large enough and you have enough data to train it. It would be able to understand when you pass, well, not understand per se, but it'll be able to like get the idea of what's being said when you pass like your prompts to it in like similar language, and be able to give you like um responses that are very very human like to like your prompts basically. So they're adapted from transformer models, and some examples of large language models include GPT-3, BERT, and Transformer XL. And they are poised to have like major impact on various industries. So like they've started being used in different companies, like large tech giant companies. And basically ChatGPT is one of the first examples of a company giving access to the wider audience to like one of their models, and like trying to use that to do research and gain more information. Lots of these other companies already have like large language models in operation on the back end, but they just don't release that to people because of the fact that it's very very hard to quality control for these large language models, because they're so huge and trained on so much data that like getting accuracy perfectly on them is hard. So they haven't been released yet. Like ChatGPT is one of like the first one, and like with OpenAI to GPT-3, those are the first ones that actually allowed access to this technology to the wider audience of people. And basically, they even give like they give a warning telling people that like they should be careful when they use it, because like even for the research models that are released, they fully understand the fact that they aren't going to be accurate 100% of the time, and they're just using it to gain more information right now. So, why are large language models so powerful? Well, they're powerful because they can understand language and they can communicate. So, like in every business, almost well, basically every business that involves a human being involves communication, right? Like if you're selling something, you need to communicate with your clients. Uh, like if you're even within a company, you need to communicate. There needs to be communication between like employees, managers, like different people that work in the company. Communication is everywhere, language is everywhere. And like large language models, on the basis of just the subject matter, the things that they deal with, they're widely applicable because like language is used everywhere. Like that here, since languages are used for more than just human communication, like they have wide applications that are still being researched and discovered. So like there's lots of ways to like hook large language models into different industries and like different applications, just because of how like very open-ended like the subject matter actually is, the concern, which is just language. Like for example, programming languages are just language just because of the fact that like human language is way too like vague and it's way too complex to perfectly model out computer programs based on just human description. Programming languages for computer are like a bit more restrictive, and they're very very easy for like systems like large language models to understand and be able to work with. So uh, one of the other reasons why large language models are powerful is that like you only need to provide very few examples to them for the models to learn. So like if anyone has worked with like machine learning, artificial intelligence, like different models before, you understand that the process of getting a model to do something, you need to generate like get a lot of data that's like pertinent to the thing that you're trying to accomplish, and then feed all that data into the model, like constant, like a lot of data, and then test the model to make sure that the model is like performing the way you want it to go. So with like some of these large language models, this really, really advanced ones that are being like released to the public right now, you don't need to provide as many examples as you would with like the other ones in the past, because it's like you just need to show it with like one or two examples basically, and the model will be able to do like what you want with those examples. So like the applications are really, really vast, even just beyond industrial applications. Like it goes way into like hooking up with people's personal lives, and yeah, lots and lots of ways that this could be useful to people. And finally, why are they so popular? Why is it so popular and like powerful? They can be customized for new use cases. So you can like some of these companies that have large language models like OpenAI, Cohere, they give people the opportunity to customize like the models that they have. So let's say you're a company that is a bit more conscious about the fact that you might need to automate a lot of your processes, meaning that you gather a lot of data on like how things are done. You can feed all this data into one of these models and get it to do something a lot more specific than like the OpenAI or Cohere or whatever AI as a service provider actually allows for. Meaning that like they can be used for a lot of industries, and the amount of data that's even required for those fine-tuning cases is a lot less than if those companies were working on their own or using like other systems basically. So what can large language models be used for generally? Before we go into the more security specific stuff, large they can be used for natural language processing tasks like text classification, sentiment analysis, and summaries. They can generate creative content like music, poetry, artwork. You can use it to write like rap lyrics. You can use it to write lyrics to a song in the style of a particular person. You can use it to write poems. Like you can use it to generate artwork, all kinds of stuff like that. It's really, really interesting considering like how a machine, an automated system can like exhibit creativity at the human level. Uh, they can also be used for chatbots and conversational AI for customer service, marketing, and entertainment. So like ChatGPT is a chatbot. It's based off the GPT-3 actual large language model, and basically the large language model has been used now for ChatGPT so that like in a more conversational way it can use all the existing functionalities of like GPT-3. So they can be used for chatbots, and they're a bit more advanced in that like they can retain memory over time of like conversations that have been had. They can like integrate more of the things that have been discussed into like the actual responses. So they're really, really useful for like conversational use cases. Next one, translation and language model based interpreters. So as you will see in one of the examples in the next slides, like they can be used for translating between different languages. And well, I mean, that they can translate between languages. That's a use case. That's something that's possible with them. Also, image captioning and description generation. So they can be used to generate descriptions of like different things, different I don't know, occurrences. You can take like a specific short description, expand on it with the language model, and basically get a lot more content of something that you already have. So that's possible with them. Another one is question answering and information retrieval. So you can ask them questions, large language models questions, and get back responses from them with the answers to those questions. You will see in the next slides that like a lot of this stuff is a bit more complex than like you would normally think about. So with the question answering and information retrieval, even though it's possible to use them for all these things, we should always try to be careful when we use them, but that's just me skipping the gun. I'll get to that later. And next one is programming assistance. So like I expressed before, like they're very, really good at languages, and programming languages are languages. So they can help out with like programming tasks, and they're already being used like in the industry now. Like there are different examples like Tab9, OpenAI Codex, GitHub Copilot, which actually is based off OpenAI Codex in the background. It's a fine-tuned like use of OpenAI Codex. But yeah, they can help you write code. They can critique your code. They can like analyze your code. They can generate code for you. They can complete your code as you're writing code. So these are the things that are possible with like large language models generally. Okay, moving on. So we've discussed large language models, like what they are and how they like what the things that they can do, what's possible with them, and different use cases. So now let's go into ChatGPT, which is what this whole presentation is about. What is ChatGPT? So basically, it's a chatbot. It's a web chatbot developed by OpenAI. It's built on top of GPT 3.5, which is part of the GPT-3 family of large language models. So ChatGPT itself is not a large language model. It's a chatbot. And GPT 3.5 is like the back-end large language model that ChatGPT uses for all of those functionalities that we enjoy when we use like ChatGPT. So basically, in essence, it's an interface into like the GPT 3.5 large language model. So it allows us to like hook into the different functionalities that already exist with GPT-3. And it was launched last year, November 2022, and like basically just appended like a lot of already existing trends and became like the center point of like internet culture right now. Everyone is talking about it, and like everyone is using it for like all kinds of crazy cool new applications. And yeah, it can generate detailed responses and articulate answers across many domains of knowledge. So it's really, really good at answering questions and providing details to like whatever questions you ask it. So next slide, we'll see like an example of ChatGPT providing like a description of itself. So I try to be a bit meta with this. Like I'm doing a presentation about using you to augment cybersecurity operations. Can you tell me a bit about yourself? And tell a funny joke at the end. So like it generated this response for me. like describing what it is. Uh, I'll give some time to like read through this, but yeah, it's really, really cool. So it basically just covered the fact that it can answer questions, it can generate text, it can assist with translations, and the fact that it's been trained on a ton of text, basically using different processes like deep learning, natural language processing to like generate those responses that we see. So this is a funny joke that I generated here to keep things a bit light, I guess. And yeah, so what can ChatGPT be used for specifically? So we've covered what large language models can be used for. We've covered what ChatGPT is, right? So like what are people using ChatGPT for? And what's possible with ChatGPT since like there's open access to that and we all have access to that right now. What can you do with ChatGPT? So I tried to categorize all of the functionalities because there's a lot and covering all of them seems a bit difficult. So at the high level of abstraction, we can say like all the different like, use cases for ChatGPT fall under like generation, here summarization, uh, rewriting, and extraction and classifying. So these are like the general use cases of ChatGPT. And then inside all of these use cases, we can start getting a bit more specific with like how those actually work. Like inside generation, what do you generate? Well, you can generate descriptions, all kinds of text that's based on different configurations of like human language, basically. So, like product descriptions, emails, answering questions, generating suggestions, brainstorming, ChatGPT can help out with all these things. And it can summarize. Basically, this is not generation. It can take like what you pass into it and then give you a short synopsis of all the stuff that you sent to it. So, like, you can summarize paragraphs, you can summarize dialogues between different people that you have on paper or on file, summarize that into like an overview of the whole like conversation, basically customer support chat, summarize all these things. So that's really, really cool. So an example of the generate use case is here. So this is me actually using this at work. So I was trying to solve a problem, and the problem basically is like how do you capture changes in a system diagram, like changes in different releases, like for a systems design process, right? How do you capture specific changes that have gone on in the system diagrams through different iterations of system design? So basically, I tried to see if I could use diagrams to model this, and I was looking for ideas. I didn't need anything like substantial, and I was tired to like search on Google for all this stuff. So I was like, okay, just give me ideas on specific diagrams that can capture all those changes in the system since last release. So it generated all these diagrams, types of diagrams that I could use to solve this problem. So I like read through all of the descriptions, and this gave me an idea of like what to search for on the internet. Like, okay, let's say traceability diagram. I could just like focus on this and search for this. So this is like as an alternative to having to go search Google as a starting point to solving this problem. I could just use this and it gives me like a short bullet pointed summary of like the things that are possible to be used to solve this problem, which was really nice. So another question is like, how do you make a traceability matrix less verbose? This is like me building off this. I already like focused on this using a traceability diagram to solve the problem. And I was like, okay, now that like I know what a traceability diagram is or a traceability matrix, I've searched online. I know what it is, how it works, and what it looks like. Now, how do I specifically reduce the verbosity? Because like this is not a problem that you can find solutions to on the internet. It's a research problem, basically. I'm basically trying to adapt the traceability matrix to a new use case that doesn't exist. So I'm like, I want to summarize it and I want to reduce as much of the verbosity to reduce the complexity in the diagram. And I need the ideas from like ChatGPT. So it provided all of these ideas for me, and I could just like use anyone or use this as the starting point for new idea generation, which is really, really useful for work stuff, basically. So next use case for ChatGPT, you can use it to rewrite like content that you already have. So let's say you have like you're reading something on the internet, and not even the internet, let's say it's even a book, or I don't know, an article, anything that you're reading, you can rewrite the stuff that you're reading, and using ChatGPT to, let's say you want to paraphrase it to a different voice, maybe you want to go from first person to third person, you can do that with like ChatGPT. Or let's say you want to use past tense, or basically take that content and express it in a completely different way. ChatGPT can do that. You can analyze the content that you pass into it for spell checking, like grammatical corrections and all of that, to fix like possible issues that can be in the text. You can redact personally identifiable information. It can like automatically detect if personally identifiable information exists in text that you pass to it, and say, okay, let's say rewrite this content by removing all this stuff, all possible PII that's inside that content. It can do that. That's something that's possible. And another use case is like reduce the complexity of content. So you're reading something, you don't fully understand it, right? And like reading complex content is weird, because if you don't understand it, then sometimes you don't know what to actually search for. Because like, how do you read something that you don't understand? How do you find information about something that you don't even understand fully? So it can help you to reduce the complexity of something that you're reading. So let's say, just say like, take this paragraph and express this paragraph in a simpler and like easier to understand way. It can do that. So an example of that is explain transformer models to me, like I'm a first year computer science student, and basically generated this. And I took this paragraph here, the second paragraph, and it seems a bit complex. So I'm like, can you reduce the complexity of this paragraph without losing any detail? And basically it like expresses like this content in here in a simpler way, while still preserving the central idea of like the content that I pass to it, which I think is really, really cool. So like, if you're struggling with understanding stuff, or like there's like complex content that you're reading, it can help you with generating like areas to look for more information to understand that thing, or even like a simplified version of that thing that you're reading. So I get that you can't pass an entire book into this. That would be nice if you could pass a whole book and then summarize the book into, I don't know, 100 pages to 10 pages. That would be cool. But let's say you're reading stuff and there's this smaller segment that you don't fully get. So you can just pass that and use this example prompt to get like a simpler version. So that's just something that's possible with this. And next set of use cases, you can extract keywords. So you can pass in like a bunch of content and basically extract the keywords that you can use to search for information from that content. So someone drawing on my screen. Sorry. How do I get rid of this?
Sorry, let me, I'll try and play it.
All right. So you can extract keywords from the content that you pass into ChatGPT. So basically, it's all about using the right prompt to get the right results from the chatbot, basically. So depending on your prompt, you can use it to extract keywords. You can use it to flag personally identifiable information, which is different from it's different from using it to redact personally identifiable information, because this is the rewrite use case and not an extract use case. So with this one, you can extract all the PII and then just like flag them and say, okay, this content contains like personally identifiable information, basically. And another one is creating tags for blogs. So basically you can tag a blog, classify the blog based on like what kind of content is contained, not maybe not even based on the full blog content. You can take maybe the first paragraph of the blog or the title of the blog and use that to express which like class it would belong to, or like which tags we would need to have to be searchable and be identifiable on a tagging page. And the next one is classifying. So this is kind of like extract, except that with extract, you can extract that on like all the stuff that's already in there and generate like the central keyword based tags. With classification, you can pass in some content and try to get a feel for, on like a small set of different classes that you've established, where that content falls. So like with classification, you can say, I have this title that for this particular thing, like based on like it, let's say 3 established classes. For example, a vulnerability. I know what like a vulnerability is. I know the title of the vulnerability, but I have like maybe 3 different classes that vulnerability could fall in. So maybe authentication, maybe authorization, and maybe business logic. So if you pass that in and you express the different classes that are possible for that content to fall in, ChatGPT can give you the right like classes and give an explanation of why like the content would fall into that class. And the next one is sentiment analysis. Sentiment analysis is just like, oh, like if you can take in content and pass that to ChatGPT and say, okay, is this positive, negative? Like, what did the person that wrote this feel about like this the particular subject matter that's being discussed? Do they like it or do they not like it? Like, what's their opinion on it based on like the analysis of the text that gets passed? So I'll show an example of that now. So yeah, for extracting keywords here, I passed in this prompt to it that says, can you extract queries from this paragraph to help find more information? So I passed in the same paragraph, the second paragraph from that Transformers example. And I was like, give me all the searchable, like search queries. So if I wanted to investigate further into like this topic, or if I wanted to investigate further into resources that would provide more information on this paragraph that I've extracted from the like whatever thing I'm reading, how would I find that? Like, how would I use Google to find more information? So it can generate like all the search queries that you can use to find more information on topics. So like these are possible search queries based on like this paragraph here. So it's about transformers. So like transformer models, self-attention mechanism. Self-attention is important here. The differences between transformers and traditional RNNs. Self-attention mechanism in deep learning. Transformer models explain the applications of transformer models. So I can use all these search parameters, all these search queries to get more information, to read more beyond what ChatGPT could like probably give me about this topic. And that would just like augment my learning process, and I would be able to like find more information and learn faster than I would if I didn't have access to this. So this is the sentiment example, like for sentiment analysis that I discussed here. Like, what is the sentiment of this statement? That's the prompt that I passed into this. Like, this statement, damn, I'm going to wake up on Monday and find out that I've been laid off and replaced by ChatGPT. And it's like the sentiment of the statement is negative, obviously, because like the speaker expresses frustration and concern about the possibility of losing their job. I mean, replaced by a machine. So that's just like getting a feel for what's the tone, like what the person that wrote this feel like about being replaced by ChatGPT. So we can tell that it's actually negative here, and ChatGPT agrees. So yeah. Now we move into some cool examples of ChatGPT usage. So yeah, like this is just one example of like the language translation use case that I established previously. So it says, can you write 2 sets of instructions about to make like miso soup, one in English and one in Japanese? And you can see it like it gives like basically can give you multi-language responses based on your prompts, which is cool, and gives like a list of steps for achieving a particular goal. And this is a like personal example that I used recently. I'm notoriously forgetful, especially when it comes to using SCP. I always forget like which part of the like like the stuff that I'm using, like the terminal command represents what. So like when you're sending to a server or when you're receiving from a server, like how is that arranged? So this helped me. I actually used this like I think yes, no, 2 days ago to generate it because like I forgot how to use SCP and I didn't want to go searching on Google to find that. So I was just like, I need to transfer files from my computer to test.com as EONI and like the directory that I'm sending it to is this, and I want to use SSH. So give me a terminal command that I can use to do that, and this is it. I mean, here this is obviously like wrong. Like this isn't Perl, but I guess there's an issue with their syntax highlighting system there. So like it gives the SCP command like SCP, this is a local file here, and then this is the remote server that's using SSH, and then this is the directory where you want to store the thing. And yeah, it just gave that, and I copied it and I used it, and it worked. So much for laziness. And this is another example here. So this is for debugging the code like example that I mentioned, but rather than using OpenAI Codex, which is like more specific to this, I tried to like see if ChatGPT could like effectively debug code for me. This is not like an actual work use case because I'm not that dumb that I can't like do this myself. Just detect like there's a type error in like just this Python code. But I just wanted to see if it was possible to accomplish this. And yeah, there's a type error here between adding like 10 and 20 because like these are two like different data types, I guess. And yeah, it can debug your code and give you like information about where the like issue is, like where the bug might be in the code. And case study. So this would be exploring an actual use case that I actually worked on recently. So actually, it's not worked on; it's working on. So it's a project that I'm working on for work right now. So I'm trying to map. We have like CWE titles, and we use CWE, and we have like weaknesses in our database from my company, and we have like dynamic custom weaknesses that we define for ourselves, like for like security research for different technologies that might not be accurately covered by CWE IDs. CW is a source of validation for the weaknesses, and it's a source of classification for the weaknesses that we define internally. But when CWE updates like the list of IDs that they have, like when they add new IDs, which I think they recently did, like as recent as January, I think, like there's a new version of CWE. So I'm trying to map out CWE titles to weaknesses that are arbitrary. So I wanted to see if I could use ChatGPT to at least speed up the process. And I started out by asking ChatGPT whether it was possible to even accomplish this. And like it responded affirmatively. So then I then passed in the actual CWE, like that I was trying to map weaknesses to. So this is the new CWE that just recently got added, dependency on vulnerable third-party components. It like falls under supply chain and basically poor integration of like code. So when you're like writing code and then you don't like pay close attention to the vulnerability of the component that you're working on that was written by other people, you can introduce security vulnerabilities into your application just by using that component. So this is the CWE here, this is the CW ID, and this is the CWE title. So I was like, keep this in mind. And I expressed like what I wanted to accomplish with the CWE ID and title. So yeah. Then I said, give me a large list of possible search queries to find similar weakness definitions to CWE 1395. So like I expressed, we have a database of like weaknesses, and it's hard to do mapping because for mapping, it's a manual process of searching for like specific generated search queries that might find something that's similar to that weakness. So, like for example, with the CWE like 1395, the weaknesses that we've defined are very, very vast and very vague. So to find something that can be mapped to this, you need to like spread your search strategy wide and search for as many things as possible. So I tried to use this to get like search queries that I could use to search for stuff that might help me find like weaknesses that are similar to this. And it gave me all of these queries here. So vulnerable third-party components, dependency on vulnerable software, security risk associated with third-party components, attack surface created by third-party components, supply chain attacks, DLL hijacking and third-party component library misuse. And all of these are like things that you can search for. And then if a weakness if like a weakness in our database falls under these, then it would be possible to map that weakness to this CWEID that's right here. So I was like, I did this, and then I used this to search for like weaknesses. And when I started finding weaknesses in our database, I tried to see if like ChatGPT can actually map out that weakness to like the CWEID, and if it could do that accurately. So look at this definition here: authentication misconfiguration for Kubernetes cluster. This is a weakness that we have in our database, and it's one of the things that turned up as a result of these search queries. So I was like, can you tell me if just from this title of this weakness, if the weakness is related to CWEID 1395? And it said no, which, yeah, even for me, just reading this inattentively, yeah, it's not related to 1395 because 1395 is like dependency on third-party component. And this is an authentication vulnerability for Kubernetes. So there's like no link between them. So I was like, just say yes or no. I don't need all this extra stuff. I just need to know if it's like related or not. And I fine-tuned the prompt here. And after fine-tuning the prompt with the next one, I then asked like, what of this new like weakness, access control check implemented after asset is accessed. So this is obviously like an authorization vulnerability too. And it said, no, it's not directly related to CW1395, which is accurate. So yeah, ChatGPT can help with this mapping, like this mapping process of mapping CWIDs to weaknesses, which is interesting just from using ChatGPT. So what I'm actually doing right now for the next steps is that I'm using GPT-3, the GPT-3 API. They provide an embeddings API. They provide an embeddings API endpoint that allows me to basically get word embeddings for these titles. So I'm going to be using that to try to dump out all the weaknesses that we have and map them automatically with code to like the CWIDs. Because ChatGPT is all nice and good, but you cannot use it programmatically yet. OpenAI is still working on the ChatGPT API, but they haven't released it. So right now, we only have access to GPT-3, like the GPT-3 API. So that's what I'm using to solve this problem. Okay. You can ask questions at any point, please. Like, feel free to interrupt me if something isn't making sense. I forgot to mention that at the beginning, but yeah, that's important because I've been told I move like really, really fast sometimes. So like, feel free to ask questions. And now that we've gone over some of the cool like possible use cases and how I've personally implemented this using this at work, let's go over the limitations, because I think like it would be intellectually dishonest to just come here and mention all the use cases without mentioning the fact that it's very, very limited right now, especially for mission critical systems. So like, what are the limitations of ChatGPT? It sometimes writes plausible sounding but incorrect or nonsensical answers. So like, it's really, really confident. Like, it gives confident sounding answers that to the less critical people, you would think that those answers would be correct because of how they look. They look well put together. They look like they could be like actual solutions to that problem, but upon further closer inspection, sometimes you find out that like these answers are just completely nonsensical, illogical, and make no sense. So it sometimes does that. It would be like very, very tragic for someone to use this without any like human involvement or like human checks and balances in a system, because it will cause lots of issues. It's not perfect. So the next limitation, it's sensitive to tweaks in the input phrasing or attempting the same prompt multiple times. So if anyone has used ChatGPT here, you would have noticed that sometimes if you pass in a prompt to it, it would tell you that it doesn't know the answer to that question, especially if the prompts are based on like weird, unique, niche, like industries and like use cases. So it would give you like, oh, I don't know the answer to this question, or like my like stop training date was like 2021, so I don't know if this answer is fully correct. But sometimes if you pass in the same prompt without changing anything, or even change just a small tiny aspect of the prompt, it would give you a completely different answer that's like completely logically different from like the thing it gave you previously. So like it's not very consistent with the answers that it gives, meaning that like if it can give you two completely different answers, you should probably not trust the answers that you get from this for like maybe like passing disseminating information, or like outright solutions without developing it further, or like DYOR, doing your own research to like develop whatever you get from ChatGPT. Because like the answers are very, very varying. They're always different when you pass in the prompt. So we should always be careful with that and try to do like our own research after getting answers from ChatGPT. Or if anything, use it as an idea generation tool rather than a solutioning tool. Do not use it to actually solve the problems completely. Like, don't use it to generate the end results. Use it to generate the idea that you now work on yourself with extra research that you put in yourself, and not just generating results. And next, the model is often excessively verbose and overuses certain phrases, such as restating that it's a large language model trained by OpenAI. So yeah, sometimes it like overuses certain phrases, and like it's the fact that it's so it depends on like all these patterns has allowed like people to actually develop tools that can detect if someone has used ChatGPT to generate like some content or an answer. There are tools that can detect that because like it's kind of deterministic while also being a bit chaotic. So like you will get multiple different responses to your prompt, but those responses, even though there are many and they're varying, those responses are still kind of predictable in the terms that like their structure are always kind of the same that you get back, depending on the kind of prompt that you pass into it, of course. So yeah, it can be excessively verbose. So an example of this is here. Focus on this authentication, on this definition here. Like it then gave me all this extra stuff. I said, is it related? It could be yes or no, or just establish how it's related, but then it goes further and then starts generating stuff. So it's not intelligent in a classical sense, that it doesn't know like what all these words actually mean. It's just doing computation on the back end based on probability calculations and trying to use that to like find what's the next most probable like word to use in the response based on the prompt. So it can get verbose, it can get maybe a bit too short with the responses that you get from it, because like it's not intelligent, it's not smart, it's not sentient. It's just a large language model that's really, really sophisticated in the end. So it can do sophisticated things and it has a lot more applications, but we shouldn't make the mistake of thinking that it's actually smart or it has general intelligence or it understands cause and effect, because it's not. It's just using like lots of data that it was trained on and like math to try to like guess what's going to come next, basically. And next, the model guesses what the user means, even when the queries are vague or nonsensical. So like for this, some queries that you pass into it, sometimes, depending on whether or not the content moderation system is like well well designed, sometimes it'll tell you when like it's unsure of like a certain idea or a certain response that like it gives to a question. It'll tell you when it thinks that that information might have been updated, but other times it might not tell you like that, oh, you probably should Google this thing yourself, or even ask you extra questions about what you mean about what you're passing into it. Sometimes it goes off like what it thinks like that solution would be, or what you're actually meaning by what you pass into it, basically. So like sometimes it guesses what you mean and it doesn't ask extra questions. So we should try to be as specific as possible with the prompts that we pass into it in terms of like what we want and like the actual answers that we want back. So try to be specific with your prompts. I'll establish more on that when we get to best practices for usage. And next, it doesn't adequately refuse inappropriate requests. So ChatGPT, as something that has such a large impact on our society and culture right now, it doesn't adequately refuse like requests for generating content that might, like NSFW content, like content that's not safe for work, like talking about like sex stuff, murder, committing crimes, all that kind of stuff. OpenAI has content moderation implemented, but it's not very robust, and they're still researching how to augment it right now. You can basically just use your words in creative ways to trick the model into doing like interesting things, to say the least. Like they've implemented like uh, content moderation that can detect to a degree if like your prompt is requesting for something illegal. But if you reward your prompt, then it might not detect it. Like we're all hackers here. We know that like when there's filtering involved, or when you're trying to like scan for words, or you're trying to scan for the presence of certain things that might lead to vulnerabilities or like lead to weird things happening. We know that like when there's a filter involved, there's always going to be bypasses, especially when like it's like web application stuff. There's a WAF. You can always find bypasses because like WAFs can never fully like account for all the possible variations of the payloads that we pass to them. And the same thing applies here for content moderation with large language models, specifically ChatGPT. You cannot perfectly like account for all the possible variations of the prompt, especially since the prompts are very open-ended. It's the whole like English language or whatever language you're passing into it. The whole language, the population of the whole language is what you can use to represent your intentions. So they can't fully like protect against getting the model to do weird things, basically. So you can always get it to do strange things based on just like manipulating it and using creative prompts. So that's another limitation to it. And now we go to the ethical considerations. So, what are ethical considerations involved? Like all this stuff, I'm still going to get to the cool hacking part. Don't worry, the cool hacking part is going to come like right after this. But I feel the need to first talk about all these things because I feel that they're a lot more important to know than just talking about hacking. Like this technology is societally disruptive. Like if we're not careful, like it can completely destroy our culture. And basically, how do we prevent this? By being responsible with the technology when we use it. So first one, competence, cheating. So basically, when you use ChatGPT or large language models, we have to be careful with like how we represent the work that we generate from it. Like, do you call the work your own? Or do you represent the work as coming from ChatGPT with your own input to it as well and your own research? Because like not doing that could also be cheating. Because like there's a like degree of expectation that like people that give you a responsibility have of you carrying out the job yourself. And if you're not doing it yourself and you're basically outsourcing it to a large language model, that could be deemed cheating. And in the long run, that could actually reduce your level of competence because then, like, are you fully, truly capable of doing that thing? There's an idea that it helps you do stuff, and some things for certain professionals, they can focus on like the more difficult things rather than working on all those like boring stuff that can be outsourced to ChatGPT. But we should have it in our minds to be careful with overusing it and like becoming intellectually lazy in the long run from using it just too often. So let's just have this in the back of our minds. I don't have any like specific advice about like when to use it or when not to use it or when it's deemed cheating. It's just that we all have an idea of like personal responsibility. We all know full well like when we should do certain things and what things might have like a bad effect and what things people have already like given to us with the expectation that we'll carry them out with care and with due diligence. We all know these things. So based on like your specific situation, you should try to be careful with overusing it basically. And next is abuse, jailbreaking. This is just an extension of the first point. Let's try to be responsible with the technology and not like use it for like evil, bad things that might cause harm to other people in our society, like generating misinformation, which is the next point. Like, let's not just pass data that we get from ChatGPT without evaluating it. Let's all do research and do our due diligence about what we like get from it. So don't just like read into like what you're getting from it and think that, oh yeah, this is the actual truth. Like this is what is representative of reality. Let's try to research that thing ourselves and be sure before we pass it to other people or even take it as a fact. So next one, degrading human communications. This also flows with like increased use of it. Like the more we use it, the less likely some of us in society, especially the younger people that are like raised on technology, the less likely they are to want to communicate with their peers, because like less social people that normally don't want to have to talk to other people might end up using this more frequently for social communication than normal when they would have to talk to real people like initially before this technology actually blows up. So yeah, let's be careful about degrading human communications and like let's try to not overuse it for like stuff like that, and let's try to reach out to others if we have to talk to people and not use this as a substitute for talking to actual human beings. Next one is perpetuating bias. So this one flows into how like the technology was created. It's a machine like in machine learning, there's a huge issue with like bias in training data that's passed to different models. So basically, when data is selected, it's very hard to be unbiased with like data selection because it's a very large scale process, and reality sometimes is off, like it's biased because of the fact that like the biased opinion and the biased views and perspectives that the people that built the technology have sometimes infects the actual technology itself. Like with the model, if the people selecting like the data to pass into the model use a lot of biased data and they don't do it carefully, then like the model itself is also going to just reflect that bias in the data because that's just how it works. It learns off the data, and if the data is bad or the data is biased, which inevitably always will be biased in some way, it's fairly hard to completely remove bias, then those biases that exist as a result of, let's say, some issues that we have in society will only get perpetuated by the technology itself, because the biases exist and technology just spreads the bias like more and more and more, and society just keeps getting worse. So that's another issue that we have to watch out for. This just flows into always still maintaining our critical thinking skills while using this technology. Let's still think, let's still work hard on stuff, let's still do our own research even with access to this technology. Let's not be lazy. Ethical considerations still continued. So job placement. So this is one that I personally had to deal with recently, like trying to automate things with this technology. Like it's about like being a bit more sensitive to the other people in our society that have jobs that might get replaced with this technology. Like if something doesn't need to be automated, if someone is going to be able to do that job with some care, a question that we should ask ourselves is, do we really need to automate this process if someone is ready and willing to do it? And it goes in different levels. From an organizational level, obviously it's logical. If a process can be automated for less the cost, then it makes all the sense to automate that process. And companies would think like that, but we aren't companies, we're people. So when like automating stuff and like replacing people with technology or and stuff like that, let's be careful and let's be a bit more sensitive to like the others in our society that have like a bit more vulnerable jobs that can be replaced by like artificial intelligence. And next one is ignoring limitations. So this is an ethical consideration. Like people that ignore the limitations of the technology and try to overhype it and like just focus only on the good parts and not talk about like the actual bad parts and the effects that it can have and what it sucks at doing and what it should not be used for. Like some people even just, apart from just like ignoring like the limitations of the technology, they try to use mental gymnastics to like say, oh wait, maybe the prompt is bad, you should use a better prompt and it would be able to do something better instead. But no, like the technology itself is kind of limited based on like the data. There are just some use cases that it's not good at, and even the use cases that it's good at, it has like hiccups once in a while where something that you expect it to be very very good at, it would give you a bad like response to that request. It would give you a bad answer, give you a bad solution. So that's something that we should be careful of. Let's not, the technology is nice, it's exciting, we're living in the future right now, you know, there's lots of crazy stuff that you can do. But while we're looking at the crazy stuff, let's also look at the stupid parts that it's very, very bad at, because it has huge effects on our society. If we only focus on the good parts and we keep pushing that, then like those effects on society could turn negative, apart from just the positive ones that we've been seeing so far. Okay, next. Now the fun part. How can ChatGPT be like help with hacking? So uh, okay, hacking is a very very wide field. Like there's lots of specific areas in hacking, and it's going to be hard to cover most of it. So I'm focusing on uh, web application type stuff. I included malware here because this is like an actual use case that's very, very popular right now on the dark web. And there are lots of articles being published about people using ChatGPT to make like basic info stealers and simple malware. I included that because it's very, very popular. But the rest of my focus will mostly be on web app stuff. So the first use case for using ChatGPT with hacking is breaking down code snippets. And I think I already covered this in my first examples. So ChatGPT can help you break down code snippets. For example, like just one case study. Let's say you're trying to hack a web application that uses obviously JavaScript on the front end. Like there's some JavaScript code that was like custom written that does a lot more than just display stuff or animate stuff. It actually handles data and helps with like data processing and handling responses from a server. You can pass that, like whatever parts of that code that let's say you have a hard time understanding, to ChatGPT, and it can help you break down like the code and help you understand it. So basically you can think of this as like advanced debugging. So rather than spend all that time like pasting the code into like your IDE and then trying to see replicate like what it's doing to see what all the stuff that like can happen to it, you can pass it to ChatGPT. It's not a replacement actually, like you can do both, and ChatGPT can just speed up the process of understanding the code. So pass it into ChatGPT and it'll explain like, you know, how like the things that are work like occurring inside that code, like what's going on. And you can include like some extra context that I will need a security specific perspective on this code that I am passing into like the as a prompt. So focus on the security implications of this code. And then you can provide maybe a bit more context and say this code works in a particular application that does this particular thing, right? How can it be vulnerable, or how would it help that application accomplish its task? So there's lots of possible ways of doing that. I'm going to like just cover some of them. Like I can't cover all of them because it's just so wide. Like there are variations of how to do just that, like use case breakdown code snippet, lots of variations, and each one of them is interesting, and each one of them can like provide some valuable insights and speed up the process of understanding like that code basically. So that's the first one. Second one is writing malware. So you can ask ChatGPT to write like malware for a particular framework or platform, and it'll do it for you. I mean, right now, OpenAI has content moderation policies to prevent like ChatGPT from doing stuff like this, like write malware. They also like track down accounts that use it for illegal stuff. But let's be honest with ourselves, that's not a huge focus for them right now. They're basically tackling like 1,001 problems, and I doubt like hunting down malware use cases is like top of their priorities. So yeah, it's possible to write malware with ChatGPT. Content moderation exists, but people bypass that all the time. I'd advise that nobody do this because I doubt the quality of the malware you get from this. It's not going to be very, very high quality. Lots of malware development involves like fine tuning your code to prevent detection from antivirus and stuff like that. Like this would just give you like boilerplate stuff. Maybe initial steps to developing like more complex solutions, but I doubt you can get anything of high value with this. And next one is writing payloads. So I covered, this is for web applications specifically. I've covered like breaking down code snippets. So you can break down code snippets to understand what's going on front end with JavaScript, on back end with, let's say you get access to the actual server side code, you can also break that down. Like let's say you're in a black box environment and you don't have access to a lot of code, and you've already looked at the JavaScript. Another thing you can do with ChatGPT is to help write some payloads for different vulnerabilities. Like there are vulnerabilities with specific payloads that you can use. So you can generate payloads for cross-site scripting, SQL injection, RCEs, all that kind of stuff, XXEs. And you can also do like scripting, like dirty bash scripting with this. So like in bug bounty, like there's a lot of scripting involved, especially with bash, because of the fact that there's lots of open source tools being used, and the way open source tools commonly fit with each other, it involves like chaining them on the terminal. So connecting one tool's like one tool to another using pipes, so the results from one tool feeds into another tool, which feeds into another tool. And with ChatGPT, you can generate all these scripts that can use like the existing tools to do stuff for you. So this would involve teaching ChatGPT like the actual parameters and the arguments that each tool expects, and what can feed into like what does each tool expect and what does each tool generate. But I suspect that it's going to be very easy to do. Like it's all about just structuring like the readme pages for those tools and passing that to ChatGPT, and then it'll be able to understand and be able to generate like commands that those tools can be used for. So let's see an example here. This example, I did like write bash code to enumerate subdomains for google.com and HTTP probe all the result domains. So this will generate like the subdomain, and then like you can just use this part to like probe each one. I mean, this is a boilerplate example, basically. Like it's something that you can find on any of these websites. But I think like for the more new people that don't really know anything about bash scripting. This gives access to technology that they wouldn't normally have access to. And another step forward from this is that, let's say you don't even understand this code and you're a noob and like you don't know anything of what's going on. All you know is that like subdomains exist and HTTP probing exists, right? And you know these two things can help you find more information about like the target that you're trying to hack. You can take this code and then like pass it back into ChatGPT and ask it to explain what this code is doing. And that would just speed up your learning process, basically. Like you can just go from knowing absolute nothing to being able to like pen test stuff. But the only issue with that is that like for the more skilled people that already have a bit more knowledge, it's going to be hard to like use all this application, like this use case, because like your the things that you're going to be trying to develop are going to be a lot more complex. So ChatGPT might not be able to help you with that. And maybe you can use like more advanced solutions like OpenAI Codex to generate code for you or help you with the things that you're already writing. But yeah, that's just the first example for bash scripting for recon. And this is payload generation. So it just generates XSC payload. And look at this, it generates XSC payload that you can use to extract etc password from obviously a Linux machine. And you just copy this, put that in an XML file and upload that, and boom, XSC. I mean, you can also get this from basically any payload hosting website, but it's fun that like ChatGPT can work on this. Like it can just generate a payload based on your prompt. So let's say you even want to get a bit more advanced. I used the boilerplate example, but let's say you want to add more stuff to it to like customize the payloads to maybe use like more entities here or use like a different type of like system file for extraction. Like it would be able to do that and customize this example basically. So you can do like less work on this part for like generating your payload, and that's cool, I guess. And yeah, like this is a cross-site scripting payload for on-click, like with image. So like that's just, yeah, an example. I think everybody knows this is like a very simple cross-site scripting payload, alert XSS, and yeah, with an image here. So let's say you can inject something into the image name and you're able to pass in like the on-click here, and that somehow ends up being rendered on the front end. Well, game over, vulnerability. So like ChatGPT can generate this payload. And let's look at more use cases of how ChatGPT can help with hacking. So it can help with targeted phishing attacks and social engineering. So like lots of people that do phishing and lots of people that do scams are not very good at writing and not very good at like using proper like English or like grammatical structure and stuff like that. I have a very strong feeling that with ChatGPT, they'll be able to generate like a bit more competent looking or a bit more official looking text for social engineering campaigns, because like they can now just specify information about their targets that they've gotten from open source intelligence gathering, maybe looking at their social media and all that, and then pass all that information to ChatGPT and request like the most persuasive hook, like social engineering hook that they can possibly give them, that would trick them like into like clicking a particular link. So they can use it to generate like fake emails, fake messages, and all that stuff now. Because normally how you detect social engineering is from like the errors, random errors that you find in like the emails that you get, like weirdly worded stuff that should not be there. It's all about like suspicion. I feel like now this will like reduce the ability to target these things, because then people can just use like ChatGPT to generate their phishing emails and like phishing messages, and it would be able to just like eliminate those issues that were existing in the past for them, in terms of being caught by using like the wrong grammar or using like a poor link or stuff like that, or even just the structure. Not being able to be persuasive in your writing can like make like the entire campaign fail. So let's say you're able to structure it a bit better now using ChatGPT, it would be better. and it would be a bit more successful in the social engineering campaign. So that's it. I guess that would be like a negative use case, but for red teamers, and like red team like operations, it would be able to help that process and speed it up. Next one, it can suggest fixes and remediation. So like when you do bug bounty and when you do vulnerability disclosure and you write your report, you normally need to add, like, if you find a vulnerability, you need to add how to fix that vulnerability. Maybe not a specific fix, maybe just a high level explanation of what the solution to that problem would look like. But you need to add that to your reports, and I think ChatGPT can help with like suggesting fixes. If you give a high level description of the vulnerability type and maybe the technology that's involved, let's say it's Python, I don't know, or Java on a server, and you're like, I want to prevent CSRF. Like, how do I prevent CSRF in, like, let's say Apache, like some Apache server? Like, how do I do that? It would be able to like suggest like some code sample that would give you like a solution to that problem that you can add to your report. So I think it helps with augmenting the report structure, like writing the whole report structure. It helps with that. It helps with including the suggested fixes and suggested remediation to vulnerabilities that are discovered during the report. And next one, writing proof of concept. So proof of concept code. Let's say you found a vulnerability now, and like you need to establish that that vulnerability is like, it's actually a big deal. So you need to write a proof of concept so that people can see that what you have in your mind is accurate with like the evaluation that you presented for that vulnerability. You can express it in a way that people can understand, and they can see that that vulnerability is actually a big deal, and they can understand what are the intricacies of the vulnerability. You can use this to write a proof of concept. Maybe like apart from just the code in the proof of concept, some vulnerabilities require like description, like descriptive information on the vulnerability. So you can use this to generate descriptions of the vulnerability for proof of concept. And you can use this to generate code for the proof of concept, because like it can help you write code, like I mentioned before. And next is instructions on how to approach a target. Oh yeah, someone asked a question. Yes, your interactions with ChatGPT can absolutely be traced. If you use ChatGPT, like I'll show you an example. Can I show you an example? I have a lot of weird. I was thinking of showing you like my ChatGPT interface. Like if you used it recently, like there's a record of all of your previous prompts that you sent in. OpenAI keeps a record of the prompts that you use, and you can see history of prompts and history of responses. So they're obviously storing your prompt somewhere. And they also need to use, because all of this, the only reason why OpenAI launched ChatGPT and provided it free to people was because they needed to use our excitement and our enthusiasm with the technology to do more research into how to improve it. So definitely they're storing it. They're using everything you're sending into like ChatGPT to fine tune the model. This is all data collection. They're collecting data from all of us. So they can like track it. I don't know why they would need to track it, or how they would need to identify a specific person, like why that would ever need to occur. Maybe you committed a crime or something, like using a payload that like ChatGPT generated that you can't find anywhere else, and then they track it to ChatGPT somehow. I don't know. It's too new now to like know whether or not all these things are possible. But I suspect like in this year, as time goes on, we'll start seeing stuff like that happen, maybe. So yeah. Yeah. So next one, instructions on how to approach a target. So like basic methodology of approaching a target, like you can provide the technology of the target, information about the target, and request an example methodology to follow. That's something that's possible. Like it's not something I would advise per se, but it's something that's possible to be done with the technology. Like methodologies are usually specific to hackers, and the methodology is a reflection of your maturity with the hacking process. the more advanced your methodology, the better you are, because the more things you're able to evaluate and the more things you take into consideration. But a basic methodology for simple hacking tricks, for simple CTF examples, is technically possible with ChatGPT, but like it wouldn't be for like the advanced, actual like experienced hackers. It would be like for really, really new people that don't know anything, and it would be able to help those people. But like more advanced people, like you probably need something better, I guess. It can help with maybe generating ideas if you've isolated a very, very specific scenario of events. Maybe you can use it to generate ideas if you provide that event to ChatGPT and ask it to give you variations of how that could, like, how things would work in that event. It would be able to provide some ideas, some ways forward, and help with your creativity. But for whole, like overall methodology, only like new noob hackers would be able to benefit from this. So yeah, some examples. Um, so suggesting fixes to code. So I provided some code, like find a vulnerability in this and provide some like remediation to this particular code. This is a code sample with SQL injection in it, and it was able to. I didn't even say like it has SQL injection. I just said find a vulnerability in it, and I passed it, and it detected the SQL injection in there, and it also provided code samples of how to fix that SQL injection, which is nice. So next one, this is the one for the overall methodology. So this is an experiment I tried to run to see if I provided like the technology, like it uses React on front end, Express.js on back end, and MongoDB on the database side. Like, can you suggest like an example methodology for approaching the target based on the technology? And what it gave back was this. So this is like an example methodology, I guess, but I wouldn't be able to benefit from this honestly because there's nothing really new in here. But someone that doesn't know anything, that was like running off, like flying off the sit and doesn't know what they're doing, could use this and like follow the instructions here. And I'm guessing for more specific use cases, like establishing that, okay, I'm trying to test for buffer overflows. I'm passing the code for buffer overflows into ChatGPT. And then like, where would the buffer overflow be? How many characters would I need to include in the payload to exploit this? It would be able to provide that. But for something a bit more abstract like this, just give me a methodology to approach the target. It's not that really, really good at doing that, but it's possible to do it. I'm guessing with like refined prompts that you pass into it, you'll be able to get better results. But yeah, this is what I got for this prompt here. So drawbacks. So these are drawbacks. I've established like general limitations like that ChatGPT itself has, but limitations that it has specific to cybersecurity and hacking. What are the drawbacks that you probably would experience if you try to use it to hack something? Well, the first thing you'll find out is that it's not very accurate. Like it won't give you the perfect right answer solution to a problem. And even when you've defined like the requirements that you need to see in the responses, it might not even like stay true to those requirements. Like, because I know that there are vague prompts and there are more specific prompts. Like when you provide specific prompts, you have a higher probability of getting like good responses, but not always the case. You can still get like rubbish from highly specific prompts. It's not perfect technology, and like I strongly feel like we all need to like appreciate that fact about it. It's not perfect and it cannot do everything. And even the things it can do, it doesn't do all those things well or perfectly. Next point, a lot of cybersecurity work would be safe from ChatGPT for now because they require human intellect. Otherwise, they would have been automated in favor of scanners. So yeah, like I said, like cybersecurity is a dynamic field, and like hacking specifically, it's dynamic and it's a merge of science and art. Like hardcore logic, and creativity, a mixture of both. And a machine, I think, cannot perfectly do that. Now, it can help a person like accomplish those tasks a bit faster or make them a bit more efficient when they're trying to do those things if they use the technology with care, but it cannot perfectly just isolate itself and like handle that tasks like independently of like human intervention, because like lots of vulnerabilities have been detected in environments where there are like highly sophisticated scanners, and the fact that those vulnerabilities are detected are just like the result of human intellect and human ingenuity, like crazy vulnerabilities that a computer can like has absolutely no way of like coming up with, and like those exist. And vulnerabilities are always going to be everywhere that are hard to find and require a bit more like specialized perspective. So yeah, like hacking is still safe for now, at least. In terms of removing vulnerabilities, ChatGPT won't be able to like perfectly handle that. So yeah, we can all keep our jobs for a bit longer. And nextly, mostly skids and low-level hackers will benefit from this. So yeah, people that don't really understand that much about like the hacking process will benefit from this. But like the a bit more experienced and a bit more skilled people would, still need to like do their own research. They can use this to help a bit, but like they can't really rely on this at all. You still need to do their own research. But I feel like scammers will benefit from this a lot, because like scamming is mostly communication, like communication based and like persuasion and tricking people. So scammers would definitely benefit from this, which I guess is a drawback, because the technology is good for stuff like that, but it's bad for like the white hat side of like trying to secure these technologies. So yeah, what are the best practices for using ChatGPT? So I just came up with these best practices because I couldn't really find anything that like helps like the average person that uses the technology. So these are based on the ethical considerations that I like talked about. So if we're trying to stay ethical and stay good while still having access to this technology and using it, some things that we should try to do when we use the technology. First one, list ChatGPT as your co-author when used in a substantial manner. So this goes into cheating and competence. Like, don't try to claim that you did it all yourself. Like, try to list it as your co-author because you used it, and like use it to improve your work and not do your work. So like use it to improve, augment, speed up the process of like getting the knowledge or getting the information or getting the insight, but don't use it to actually just do the whole thing and generate like the actual result of your work, because that is cheating and that's quite wrong actually. So yeah, use it to improve yourself, use it to augment yourself. You can use it in ways that would improve you rather than like limiting yourself and reducing your skills. If you completely rely on it, you can use it to improve yourself and improve your skills and become all the better for it. Because the way I see things going, lots of people end up relying completely on this technology and just get dumber like over time and not be able to like find information themselves. That's just an eventuality that is going to happen. People just rely on it because like people are lazy, and like if something's like lets people do less work, then obviously people would use that because then you'll be able to save time and go do other things. But you can also, rather than fall for that trap, use it in ways that would improve you. So like use it to improve your work, use it to make your work better, but don't use it to just do your work, basically. And next point, always review whatever work is generated by ChatGPT and don't trust it blindly. So like if you get something from ChatGPT, don't pass it on to other people or immediately think that's the answer, like the correct thing. Try to confirm, especially if it's based on stuff on facts, like stuff like facts, like factual information, stuff that requires that's susceptible to change, not like objective reality, things that you can see every day. if you're using it for creative work, then there's no way to like validate creative work because like it's creative work. Like write a short story on this particular thing, then there's no way to validate that. But if you're doing other stuff like hardcore question answering, hardcore research for information that's like falsifiable and verifiable, then like you should go do your own research after getting like your data from ChatGPT if like you use it to answer those questions. Don't just rely on it and trust it blindly and then immediately say, yeah, that's the correct solution. Critical thinking is still important. And next, try to be as specific about your intentions as possible without using unnecessary words because the model doesn't really understand. So it doesn't understand like what you're like persuasion and like all the additional stuff that you need when you're talking to an actual person. It doesn't know all those things. You just need to specify what you want, like in as few words as possible. Specify like exactly what you want. This is the best practice. So maybe, I don't know, save time when you're working with it and save costs, because later on when people start using it for commercial like purposes, you would have to pay money to like access APIs, and you pay based on tokens, and tokens are based on the amount of words that you use, like the amount of words you use in your prompts and the amount of words generated by like the model. So trying to be as specific as possible will eventually save people lots of money, because the funny thing is that like some prompts don't even have to be complete sentences. You can just use like shortened version, like word stemming, use word stems, remove like vowels to like shorten the prompts that you send in, so you don't pay as much money as you would need. Like the current pricing model for DaVinci for GPT is like 4 cents for every 1,000 tokens. So a token is like 4 characters long. And basically, like if you try to limit the amount of tokens you use, you save yourself some money if you're actually paying for this service, which you I think you need to do if you want to use it corporately, like for actual solutioning. So yeah. Resources. There's this website called learnprompting.org. It contains like valuable information about prompt engineering. And basically, prompt engineering is the way you communicate with like a large language model or artificial intelligence. So it basically contains information about how to specify what you want from like the like AI. So there are lots of sections in here and it goes in depth. So the prompt engineering is becoming a whole new field on its own. And I feel people will start studying this in school real soon if someone doesn't like invent a way to not need to specify information to AIs anymore. And maybe you can just click a button now and get it to do specific things. Prompt engineering is like one of those things that'll become really, really big soon, I think. As with all things, technology is susceptible to change. So nobody knows what the future is going to look like. But yeah, this is something that's really, really cool. And it helps out with working with large language models. So that's a resource. And these are my references. And that's the end of my presentation. So any questions?
Okay, this is wonderful presentation. Like it is so great. Thank you very much, Emmanuel, for this insightful knowledge sharing session. I am sure that each and every participant enjoyed the session as much as I do. And yeah, I mean, there are some questions which you've answered during the course of the session. And I want to know if anyone has any question again that you want to ask. You can just probably put on the chat box, or you can just indicate by raising up your hand if you want to speak. But personally, I enjoy the flow of it, from the language modeling to the GPT, then to the interaction, which is the ChatGPT, and then down to the cybersecurity usage and the scenarios and all of it. Thank you so very much for it. Okay, so I will assume we don't have questions here, so I have to save time. All right, so is there any way we can probably connect with you online or something?
Oh, okay. My
Charles?
Twitter.
Okay, cool.
I can send my Twitter here, but like
All right.
I have
You
to
can
search for it because it's always changing. It's I don't know what I use for my Twitter username right now. Uh,
uh,
no logged in, but let's see what it says. Haven't been on here. Well, no, that's not it. Is
think
it
I
this?
have it. Let me see.
Ah, yeah, there I am. Yeah, this is my Twitter here.
All right, cool. So you can follow me up on Twitter. Cool. Thank you so much for sharing. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Okay, yeah, the giveaway stuff. I think I will give Amina one for asking the question during the course of the session. You can just shoot me up. You can message me via WhatsApp. So if you want a voucher or probably sticker, you can just let me know. And so I also want to ask if there's anyone that can just tell me probably the relationship between the LLM OpenAI GPT 3.5 as well as ChatGPT. So if you know this, just unmute. No, not unmute. Just raise your hand. I'll probably give the first person to raise an opportunity to speak. So you can just explain what the relationship is. Okay. Let me see. All right, let me see. You can go ahead and speak.
Okay, so the LLM is large language modeling, and I think from what our speaker said is it's more like the housing. Do I use the word housing factor now for all AI models that helps to generate answers, like response to questions, while the other one, which is the GPT 3.5, I guess. Yes, GPT 3.5. That's the housing family for ChatGPT.
All right. Yeah, you're correct. You're correct. So what about OpenAI and what exactly is ChatGPT itself? Okay. I think she's on mute. Oh, you're mute. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so OpenAI, I think that is, I'm not sure, but I think that's the company that created ChatGPT.
Yeah, you're correct. You're correct. And then ChatGPT is definitely the interaction kind of a chatbot that you can use to interact with the language model. So yeah, sure. You get yourself a probably a voucher or sticker, whichever one you want. You can just let me know via my WhatsApp number. All right. So lecturer Emmanuel, that's to show that you did justice to the topic. I want to thank you again for making our time. I mean, it can be so crazy and tasking, but we thank you very much for your wonderful presentation, fluent presentation, and explanatory. Thank you so very much.
Uh,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you
Light.
for having me.
Yeah, I'd like to see you. Is it still around?
I think
Uh,
so. Yeah, he's here.
yeah, he's here. Can you just say hi to us? I don't know. I know probably your mic will be. Oh, aha. I was sure I got it right. So thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Ayo. Thank you, Amina. Thank you, Shola. Thank you, Grace, Mayana, Yemisi, Kayode, Idris, Ayo, Rootfish. Rootfish. Thank you for coming. Dakaberry, Light, Solomon King, iPhone 4, Ogechi, Zachary, JC, Rose. Thank you so much for coming. So the slide and the video will be recorded and we will post it on the chat box. You will get an email notification in that regard. So thank you very much, everyone. You can follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, anywhere, and also probably the Hack the Box Twitter account as well. And do well to join the Diary of Hackers community too. And thank you, DOH, again for partnering with us for this wonderful session. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful night rest for those that are sleeping. Thanks, Emmanuel. Cool. All right.
Thank you. Have fun, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your
Bye,
day.
everyone.